I have access to alpha. So I want to share with all of you what the new abilities for Brewmaster look like. So you can find timestamps probably down below of each of the abilities. I'm going to share my thoughts, what I think could change, any kind of bugs. This isn't really supposed to be like a big theory crafting video about like what's going to be best, because we don't know. Things are so bugged. It's early alpha. Things can change. So all that out of the way, let's kind of get into it. So we're going to start off with Jade Flash. Jade Flash is an ability that is supposed to add potency to our Crackling Jade Lightning. It's supposed to be a little homage to Windwalker and the Mistweaver specializations, also having very powerful Crackling Jade Lightning abilities. At least they used to. I don't know I haven't looked into those classes at all. But what it does is it causes your Crackling Jade Lightning to cleave 4 additional targets and have a reduced cast time and cost by 75%, but it has a 60-second cooldown. So what this ability looks like is like this. I'm going to target this cleave training dummy. When I cast Crackling Jade, it's going to channel the lightning very, very quickly. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing crazy here. If we quickly break down numbers, it is critting / hitting for like, let's just say 80 to make the numbers easy. So if we open up a calculator, we have 80 multiplied by 5 since it's hitting 5 targets. And it's hitting 5 times. So it's doing about 2,000 damage. Very simple. Now, comparatively to any other ability in our kit, let's just take Blackout Kick, for example. I guess I can leave this up here. I Blackout Kick, it's hitting for 2,300. So basically your Crackling Jade Lightning is hitting equivalent to a single target hit of Blackout Kick, actually a little bit less than that. Obviously you can take into account like crits, but the thing is it's not doing anything for your kit outside of like maybe getting some early established threats. So I'm not a big fan of this ability. I don't think it's going to be played unless they do something to it, which I think Blizzard could do a couple of things. Now this is going to be a small tangent, but we have this node here, improved Blackout Kick. I don't think this needs to be in our kit. We have this. We have Shadowboxing Treads, which is also a 20% damage amp. And we have Fast Feet, which is another 20% damage amp. Why? Why do we have 3? Okay. I just don't understand why we have to have 3. I'm not going to get heated. It's all good. What they could do is move Jade Flash to a more desirable area of the tree. For example, up here. Have a drop-down node that could increase the damage by 10% or 20% or 50% every time you keg smash up to a certain stack. So let's say it's a 10% damage amp up to 20 or 10 or whatever it might be. So then every 60 seconds, you have like this big burst of damage in 5 targets. This is something that Windwalker has showcased well over the course of the War Within through their Emperor's Capacitator talent or whatever it was called. And I think Brewmaster can have something different here as well, like something substantially more powerful than this really measly channel ability. Now, probably not going to do that. What they could just do is change the modifier for Brewmaster Monks to make it hit a lot harder, which I think would be good for both pulling from range as well as just making this damage button actually feel really potent and worth taking. Right now, I just can't see a world where we're going to actually want to take this over other points in our tree, whether it's other talents or the Apex talents that are coming in this expansion as well. So cool ability, thematic, I think needs work. The other option is just, like I said, buff it or reduce its cooldown significantly down to like 15 seconds or 20 seconds, something like that. I think 60 seconds is way too long for how much damage it is doing. In comparison, Exploding Keg is supposedly hitting for almost 4,200 and then dealing additional fire damage per target struck. So you're comparing 1 minute cooldown to 1 minute cooldown that's supposed to do big damn. One is doing significantly more damage than the other, and you can argue maybe it's a capstone or maybe it's more like synergistic with the kit. And it's like, yeah, but like if you are sacrificing and making Crackling Jade going from a filler to a big burst damage, why is it not doing burst damage? Either way, it is still a cool looking ability, but I think they need to do more with it. All right, so let's talk about the capstones for Exploding Keg. So Keg Volley doesn't matter. It just resets Keg Smash, similar to how Weapons of Order has operated in the past. We still don't know if Weapons of Order is going to be added to our kits. Currently, the Shado-pan Wisdom of the Wall like capstone is referencing Weapons of Order specifically. Also, as you deal damage, you gain a ramping buff that increases the damage of how this works. So basically, when you hit weapons, you're going to spawn a Shado-pan fighter, like an ally to fight alongside of you, and his damage is increased, or his or her, the Shado-pan fighter's damage is increased based on how many flurry strikes you proc. There is no Weapons of Order in our kit. If we look for Weapons of Order, it shows up, but it's specifically an exact match for Windwalker. So kind of a big problem here. It's okay. I'm assuming it's either a bug or they just haven't like worked out all the kinks yet. Maybe it's supposed to be baseline. Maybe they're trying to rework Shado-pan's capstone, maybe off of maybe summoning Nizao. I don't know. Yeah, it's there's a lot to talk about there. But anyways, going back to it, Fuel on the fire and empty the cellar. So let's start with fuel on the fire. This talent is really cool. Basically, after you Exploding Keg, it's going to cause your next couple keg smashes to spawn giant fire tornadoes. So this is pretty rad. So I'm gonna just chuck this right here, and now you're gonna see a buff that lasts for 20 seconds. Your next keg smash spawns a whirling flame. There it is. Very cool. The problem is I believe there's travel time. It consumed the buff, but it didn't spawn the tornado. So this is currently slightly bugged. I've put in feedback for most of the stuff that I've found so far. But that's what the ability does. It spawns a nice, cool fire tornado around. I can maybe showcase it one more time as I'm changing talents here. Editor needs to do that. Make sure that happens. So now we have Empty the Cellar. This one's a little bit more interesting to me because after you use Exploding Keg, it turns into a new ability that you can activate again, similar to the Mighty Stomp in the Nizao kind of node, which you can reactivate Nizao to make the enemies get CC'd. It will randomly throw out kegs to 5 targets, but it also reduces your brews by 0.5 seconds per keg that's thrown, so essentially 2.5 second reduction on Purifying Brew, Celestial Brew, Fortifying Brew, and Black Ox Brew. All very impactful abilities in the Brewmaster's kit that has a lot of synergy with Celestial Flames. It has synergy with your Bring Me Another Apex talent. So there's a lot of cool stuff and moving parts here. So I think Empty the Cellar is probably going to be a little bit more impactful in your kits. But here's how it works. Now, it is a little buggy. So what'll happen is I'm going to chuck Exploding Keg over here, and you're going to notice that this icon is going to change to something else. So when I use it, bam. All right, now it turns into this cool looking thing. I have a buff called Empty the Cellar that lasts for 20 seconds. When I hit this, it starts casting out these kegs. But as you can see, it threw kegs all the way over here. That's a problem. It means it's now sending it into mobs that I'm not in combat with, or shouldn't be in combat with, that aren't in front of me, that aren't near me. And you can see it happen if I use it on this other training dummy as well, which I'll showcase here in a couple of seconds. Either way, this is clearly a bug, clearly going to get fixed. But I think this has a lot more synergistic qualities with our entire kit compared to just do big fire dam. Because Exploding Keg is already doing a lot of fire damage. Plus we're getting a lot of like physical kind of bonuses in our kit, especially with like the Apex, where it'll just make more sense to play Empty the Cellar in a lot of cases. Now, don't get me wrong, there's this new talent called Vital Flame, which heals you for all fire and nature damage done. So Exploding Keg with Fuel on the Fire could mean a lot of cool healing capabilities from the Brewmaster outside of your regular like Celestial Fortune, Celestial Brew, and Guy Plin's Imperial Brew. So same thing here. I'm going to get in combat with just Crystal Maw. That's it. Exploding Keg here. Casting it again, you're going to start seeing the kegs are just going to get chucked over to Kelp Fist and to this training dummy. So clearly it's not working as it should, but pretty cool thing. You're just like chucking kegs, very thematic to the class fantasy of the Brewmaster. All right, so let's now talk finally about Celestial Flame before talking about the Apex talent. So Celestial Flame, what it's doing is every time you drink from a brew, whether it's Purify, Celestial Brew, Infusion, Fortifying Brew, or Black Ox Brew, you're going to have a 30% chance to proc Celestial Flame, which will then bolster your Special Delivery or Rushing Jade Wind to, instead of doing physical damage, to do nature/fire damage. Well, fire damage. Good synergy, again, like I said, with Vital Flame, healing you, adding like this kind of like really cool leech factor into the playstyle. The problem is it's currently bugged with Special Delivery. I don't know what's causing it, but what's happening is you're gaining the Celestial Flame buff, and then when you Purify, it's going away before the Special Delivery keg actually lands, and it just keeps doing Fizdam, which is kind of problematic. So I'm not going to showcase Special Delivery because it's just not working at all, but the Rushing Jade Wind is. So let's talk about that. So let's run over to Crystal Maw here. I'm going to apply Rushing Jade Wind before. So whether it's active or it's not, your active Rushing Jade Wind will turn into a fire tornado. And if it's not active, when you press it during Celestial Flames, it will. So I'm going to Purify here. And you're going to see now my Rushing Jade Wind is this really cool fire tornado, and it has a bigger radius. So it's hitting more targets that aren't necessarily right on top of me. So that's pretty cool. And this is going to happen whenever we drink a brew. So here it goes again. Celestial Flame is procced. I'm going to Purify again. And you can see multiple applications are being applied here. Now they are getting instantly consumed for some reason. I don't know what's causing that. That is a bug I'm going to have to kind of like go back and look at. So here it is now. Oh, I guess, never mind. It's Rushing Jade Wind. I'm dumb. It's not being double applied. But basically, it just looks cool and does fire damage. The leech component is what I'm more like interested in. If you're not playing Vital Flame, I just don't think there's a world where you need to play Celestial Flame at all, which means that you're probably just going to play Special Delivery. The one thing that I noticed too, if you read the tooltip for the Special Delivery Keg, I don't think it's dealing additional fire damage. It's like converting the physical to fire, and you're doing less fire damage than you would be doing physical. Here it's hitting for 1,000 physical, and here it's hitting for 800 fire. So that's kind of weird. Unless it's in addition to, then it'll be fine. But again, it's not working, so we don't really know. But then it's like the Rushing Jade Wind, it's dealing like the same amount of damage as fire and has a bigger radius, but it's not making it any stronger. So like it's probably going back towards like a special delivery meta, most likely. It's also weird because if you play the Apex talent, which I'll talk about in a second, it increases our physical damage being dealt by upwards of 10%. So it's like, why don't you you wouldn't want to play this because it's taking away from your damage. So there's kind of like these couple of parts of the tree that are working against each other. You want to play like a fire build because it's really cool, but like then you lose damage. And then you want to play like a lot of fizz dam, but then you don't want to, you want to like stay away from some of these fire abilities. So it's like, there's this like really weird dichotomy that's happening that I'm not sure what's going to be better, but it's still pretty cool and thematic. So I really like it. So let's talk about Apex talent. So let me get rid of just some things here. We'll get rid of Counter-Strike. We'll get rid of Jade Flash. So now how the Apex talents work, you have 4. They're like its own little tree. You have to pick the first one, and then it lets you go down into the 2 points, which is just bolstering the main one. And then you have like the capstone. So let's read through these really quick. Drinking a brew has a 20% chance to leave you with an empty barrel, which is then tossed along with your next keg smash. So it's an additional keg being tossed. It's an additional damage event that's going to hit a single target. It's not going to splash. It's not giving you CDR, anything like that. So then when you start building on that, it's going to increase physical damage you deal by 5%. It does physical damage, so you're now increasing the damage of that individual keg. And it's going to cause it to cleave to 2 additional targets. And then for the second point, it's now going to be a 10% increase in 4 additional targets. So think of it like a Chain Lightning or Avenger's Shield or how those types of abilities. You're now getting like a little bit of AoE. It's seeming like Brewmaster is going to be really good in those like 5 to 8 target encounters when you're able to hit just like 5 targets. And then finally, the capstone is Bring Me Another. They're all the same. They're all the same name, which I'm assuming that they'll change, but we'll see. When Fortifying Brew or Celestial Brew is cast, you instantly tap a fresh keg, meaning that you get the proc of the first ability. Instead of a 20% chance, it's guaranteed on your brews. So basically, Purifying Brew is a 20% chance, Black Axe Brew is a 20% chance, but your Celestial Brew and your Fortifying Brew, that's guaranteed. And then what's also cool about this is when you do cast those abilities, not only do you do that, but you apply a heal over time effect to you and 2 nearby allies, which is pretty dope. And it's going to, when you take damage, so whether it's from stagger or a melee hit, as well as your allies, they're instantly going to get healed for 26,000 over 8 seconds. Did I say instantly? No, they're just going to get healed over time. It's basically a cool hot, which I really like. So we'll see. So let's showcase what this looks like. Oh, I have another point to spend. Okay, we'll just do this. So what this does is when you do get a proc, now it's a 20% chance on Purifying Brew, but it's a 100% chance on Celestial Brew. So when I pop Celestial Brew, you're going to notice my Keg Smash is going to turn into a different looking ability. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like a little like monkey barrel. This reminds me of Mop so much. And then when you chuck it, it's going to throw this giant additional keg, as you can see, it like flies up into the air. So you can see that here getting thrown, and it's going to deal some damage a little bit later, a little bit after the fact. One other thing you might have noticed is I'm also sending out, smaller kegs, like little small barrels here. So when I hit Fortifying Brew, for example, it's going to send this little like crane-looking bottle at my allies. So pretty cool. And then it applies this heal over time effect. That's healing for 4,000 per tick over 8 seconds. So it's give or take 20, whatever, math. 26,000. So yeah, kind of cool. So Celestial Brew, and then you just get free damage from this. And then obviously when you're hitting Purifying Brew, you have the chance to turn it. I just hit Purifying Brew there. The 20% chance actually procced in my favor. You have 10 seconds or 12 seconds to send this. The main problem with this, and this is pointed out on stream by Lucy. Lucy, if you're in chat, fucking W. I don't necessarily fully agree, but basically the idea is that you could potentially munch procs. Like you can overlap a proc. Let's say you hit Purifying Brew, it procs the 20%. That's great. But then your next plan was to go into a Celestial Brew because you need to have an absorb. It's then going to reapply the buff, but it's not going to stack. So what ends up happening is you're missing out on that potential damage. Now, in a perfect world, you'll just play well and you won't have that happen. You'll make sure that you're not fishing for a 20% proc if you know you're about to hit Celestial Brew, but then it's like, well, you need to purify to reduce your stagger, but at the same time, you're not building purified chi anymore. So like, I don't really know, but basically you can game it to not munch your procs, but it is possible. So I think a small change that Blizzard could make is allow it to stack up to 2. That's it. It doesn't have to go above that. I think you should always be trying to Keck Smash anyways. The problem is if you happen to high roll or into, yeah, I guess 20% chance would be a high roll, into a proc, into a Celestial Brewer, right as you hit Fortifying Brew for some reason, because you're just in combat and you're hitting buttons frantically, because they're both off the GCD, you can munch the proc, so that's obviously problematic. But those are all the abilities. I think Brew is looking fun. I haven't really tested it in dungeons or even quested as it yet, so I have a lot of testing to do still. But I wanted to showcase the abilities for you guys because I've been talking about it the last couple days. I obviously make content about Brewmaster, and I want to share it. So hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any questions down below. By the time you're probably seeing this, I'm probably going to be live on Twitch or going live on Twitch very soon. So if you want to see me stream alpha content, stop on by. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.